The first lie I ever heard my mother tell was that she was happy. I was 7 years old, and it came wrapped in the scent of her perfume, something sharp and floral she only wore when my father was due home. She'd bend down, her smile a perfect, practiced curve, and say, "We're so lucky, aren't we, Katie?" I'd nod, because that's what she needed, even as I felt the heavy, silent stillness of our big house press down on me like a weighted blanket. My father, Robert, was a man built from schedules and spreadsheets. His love was a series of transactions, good grades earned praise, a messy room earned a cold, disappointed silence. His presence was not a warmth but a audit. My mother, Eleanor, was the shock absorber between his world and mine. She softened his edges, translated his sternness into something I could digest. "He just wants the best for you," she'd whisper, her hand soothing my hair after a bedtime story. "He works so hard for us." I believed her. I believed the entire architecture of our lives was as solid and immovable as the granite countertops in our kitchen. The cracks began as whispers, almost imperceptible. It was a Thursday. I was supposed to be asleep, but a bad dream had pushed me toward the sanctuary of my parents' room. Their door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light cutting across the dark hall. I heard my father's voice, not its usual measured tone, but something low and serrated. "Come and not a discussion, Eleanor. The Mitchell account is a disaster. I can't have this chaos at home, too. Can you just manage it?" My mother's reply was a murmur, the sound of water wearing away stone. "I am managing, Robert. She's 7. She's not a project to be managed. Everything is a project. Everything has a desired outcome. This constant emotional pandering, it's not helping her." I padded back to my room, my chest tight. The words were confusing, but the feeling behind them was clear as ice. I was a problem to be solved. My mother's love was her inefficient strategy. The next morning, it was as if the conversation had never happened. The table was set, my lunch packed, my father's newspaper folded neatly beside his coffee. My mother moved with a serene efficiency, but her eyes, when they met mine, held a new, fragile depth, like she was looking at me from behind a very clean window. The unraveling accelerated in the weeks that followed. My father's business trips, once sporadic, became frequent and extended. The empty space he left behind wasn't empty at all, it filled with a different kind of energy. My mother started playing music in the afternoons, not the classical pieces my father preferred, but old folk songs from a playlist called Sunshine Memories. She'd dance while folding laundry, spinning with a pillowcase in her arms, a soft, private smile on her face. She signed us up for Saturday pottery classes, coming home with clay under her nails and a lightness in her laugh I hadn't heard in years. One night, my father returned unexpectedly from a 3-day trip. He stood in the doorway of the living room, his suitcase in hand, watching my mother and me. We were on the floor, surrounded by a chaotic, glorious explosion of craft supplies, building a fantastical castle out of recycled boxes and glitter glue. The music was still playing. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "What is this?" he asked, his voice quiet. My mother looked up, her smile fading but not disappearing. "We're building a castle, Robert. Katie's designing the drawbridge. It's a school night. And this mess." He said the word like it was contagious. "The housekeeper just came yesterday. We'll clean it up," my mother said, her voice steady. "It's just creativity. It's just a mess," he corrected, hanging his coat with precise movements. "Dinner?" "We ate," she said. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge you can heat up." He looked at her, then at me, then at the glitter-speckled carpet. Without another word, he walked upstairs. The click of his study door was the period at the end of his sentence. My mother's shoulders slumped for just a second before she turned to me, her smile back, but now it looked like hard work. "All right, architect," she said, "let's get this royal palace tidied up." That was the night I think she began, in the quiet chambers of her own heart, to draft the papers. The night she started divorcing the truth she'd been married to for so long. The official end began on a Tuesday. I came home from school to find my father's car in the driveway at 3 p.m., an anomaly that sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Inside, the air was thick and still. They were in the living room, not sitting, but standing at opposite ends, as if negotiating a hostage situation. My mother's face was pale but composed. My father's was a mask of rigid control. "Catherine," he said using my full name, a formality that felt like a wall. "Go to your room and start your homework. Your mother and I need to speak." "It's okay, sweetheart," my mother said, her eyes never leaving his. "We'll talk soon." I fled upstairs, but I didn't go to my room. I sat at the top of the staircase, hidden by the banister, my heart hammering against my ribs. Their voices were strained, leaking up the stairs. You're being irrational, Eleanor. Think of the stability. Think of Catherine. I am thinking of Catherine. My mother's voice broke, then steeled itself. I am thinking of her watching me disappear. I am thinking of her learning that love is a list of obligations and silence. Love is responsibility. Something you seem eager to abandon. No, Robert. What I'm abandoning is the lie. The lie that this, her voice swept the room, is enough. That financial provision is the same as a home. It's not. Not for me. Not for her. So, what? You'll trade this for some cramped apartment? For struggle? You'll do that to our daughter? I am giving our daughter a chance to see her mother breathe. The words were a fierce, raw whisper. I am giving her a truth, even if it's a hard one, instead of a comfortable fiction. There was a long, terrible silence. Then my father's voice, cold and final. You'll hear from my lawyer. I heard his footsteps, the jingle of keys, the solid thud of the front door closing, the sound of a life shifting on its axis. I scrambled back to my room just before my mother came upstairs. She opened my door, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She sat on the edge of my bed and took my hand. Katie, she said, her thumb stroking my knuckles. Daddy is going to be living somewhere else for a while. We need some time apart to figure things out. Are you getting a divorce? The word felt too big, too grown up, in my mouth. She took a deep, shuddering breath. It was the breath that told me everything before she did. Yes, honey, we are. I cried. She held me, rocking gently, whispering, I'm so sorry, into my hair. But even in my child's confusion, I felt something else beneath her sorrow. A current of resolve, solid as bedrock. The days that followed were a blur of strained phone calls, the arrival of cardboard boxes in my father's study, and a heaviness that clung to the curtains. My father moved into a sleek, soulless corporate apartment. Our house, once a showpiece, now felt like a stage after the play has ended. But my mother began to change, subtly at first. She stopped wearing the sharp perfume. She let the dishes sit in the sink until morning. She started buying the colorful cereal I loved but my father had deemed unacceptable. Then came the night the divorce was finalized. My father had come by in the afternoon for a stiff, formal exchange of some documents. His presence was a ghost in the house, a reminder of the old gravity. After he left, the house felt hollowed out, exhausted. That evening, my mother was quiet. She made my favorite macaroni and cheese, but she barely touched hers. She helped me with my bath, her movements slow and thoughtful. When it was time for bed, she tucked me in with extra care, smoothing the comforter around my shoulders. The old, predictable script would have been a quick kiss, a sweet dreams, and the click of the door. But that night, she didn't leave. She sat on the edge of my bed, her shape a soft silhouette in the glow of my dinosaur nightlight. Katie, she began, her voice a quiet murmur in the dark. There's something I need to tell you about me, and Daddy, and everything. I peered up at her, sensing this was different from all the other careful, child psychology-approved explanations about families changing. For a very long time, she said, choosing each word like stepping on stones across a river, I believed a story. The story was that if I was a good enough wife, and a good enough mother, and kept a beautiful enough home, then everyone would be happy. That was the deal. That was the truth I lived in. She paused, looking not at me, but into the middle distance of my room, at the shadowy forms of my stuffed animals. But it wasn't the truth. It was a beautiful cage. And the worst part was, I was helping to build it. Every time I told you Daddy was just tired when he was angry, every time I made excuses for his absence, every time I pretended a quiet house was a happy house, I was adding another bar to the cage. I lay perfectly still, not fully understanding, but feeling the magnitude of her confession. I loved your father in the way I thought I was supposed to, she continued. And he is not a bad man, Katie. He is just a limited one. His world is small and orderly, and he wanted us to live inside that world with him. And for a long, long time, I did. I silenced the parts of me that were too loud, too colorful, too messy. I divorced myself, piece by piece, to fit into his truth. The word divorced hung in the air, taking on a new, deeper meaning. Tonight, she said, and now her eyes found mine, glistening in the low light, the papers became legal. I divorced your father today. But that's not the most important thing that happened. She leaned closer, her hand finding mine under the covers. Tonight, while putting you to bed, I am finally divorcing the old truth. The lie. The one that said I had to be small to be loved. The one that said this family could only look one way. Her voice was thick with tears, but it was also stronger than I'd ever heard it. I am so sorry for all the times I let that old truth be the guide. For the times I didn't stand up for you, or for myself, because it was easier to keep the peace. The peace wasn't real, Katie. It was just quiet. She wiped a tear from my cheek, one I hadn't even felt for. My new truth, she whispered, is this: you deserve a mother who is alive, not just present. You deserve to see what it looks like when a woman chooses her own heart, even when it's terrifying, even when it breaks things. Love shouldn't make you disappear. It should make you bloom. That's the truth I am choosing now, and I will build a home for us with that truth, even if it's smaller, even if it's louder, even if it has glitter on the floor. In that moment, in the quiet sanctuary of my childhood bedroom, I witnessed a metamorphosis. The carefully constructed persona of Eleanor, the perfect wife, the mitigating mother, was shed like a shell. What remained was raw, vulnerable, and terrifyingly real. She wasn't offering me platitudes or false promises. She was offering me her broken, beating heart and a new, shaky foundation built on honesty. She kissed my forehead, a long, tender press of her lips. The new truth starts now, my love. And it's messy, and it's scary, and it's ours. She stayed until I fell asleep, a sentinel for my dreams. The world outside was the same street, the same stars, but the world inside our home had been irrevocably altered. The divorce from my father was a legal event, a shifting of assets and schedules. But the divorce from the lie, the truth she finalized that night at my bedside, was a revolution. It was the end of one story and the brutal, beautiful beginning of another. In the months and years that followed, that new truth became our reality. We moved to a smaller, sunlit apartment that smelled of her herbal tea and my art projects. There were struggles, financial worries, the awkward dance of shared custody, my own anger and grief that ebbed and flowed like a tide. My mother went back to school for graphic design, something she'd abandoned when she married. I'd fall asleep to the soft glow of her computer screen, the click-clack of her mouse a new lullaby. My father remained in his orderly world. Our time with him was structured, museum visits and early dinners at quiet restaurants. I learned to love him within his limitations, understanding now that they were his, not a reflection of my worth. But the core of my life, my sense of what was real and valuable, was forged in the aftermath of that bedtime confession. My mother never again presented a fiction for my consumption. She was tired, she was excited, she was frustrated, she was proud. She was gloriously, unapologetically alive. She showed me that the greatest act of love a parent can offer is not a perfect facade, but the courage to be authentic, to tear down a comfortable lie even when the unknown truth is frightening. That night, she didn't just put me to bed. She buried the old world and midwifed a new one. She divorced the truth that had imprisoned her, and in doing so, she set us both free. And the legacy of that freedom wasn't a perfect life, but a real one, a life built not on the shifting sands of someone else's expectations, but on the unshakable ground of a truth, hard won and fiercely held, whispered in the dark between a mother and her daughter.